100,000 years ago, on a desert planet at the edge of nowhere, something dark was born. The beings who lived there would one day bring the entire galaxy to its knees. Welcome to Korriban, the birthplace of evil itself. This is where the Sith species first appeared, and these weren't your typical aliens. Picture humanoids with bright red skin, facial tentacles hanging from their chins, and a natural connection to the dark side of the Force that ran through their blood like poison. By 100,000 BBY, these red-skinned beings were already building massive tombs in places like the Valley of Golg. Not small graves either. We're talking monuments so big they could be seen from space. The Sith didn't just bury their dead, they turned death into an art form. Their society was built on violence from day one. Different tribes and nations constantly fought each other for control of the desert wastes. War wasn't something that happened to the Sith, it was how they lived. Every single day was about crushing your enemies or getting crushed yourself. The weak died young, and the strong took whatever they wanted. This went on for tens of thousands of years. Generation after generation of Sith warriors beating each other senseless in the desert heat. They were so busy fighting themselves, they barely noticed the rest of the galaxy existed. Around 30,000 BBY, some outsiders finally showed up. The Killiks, these giant insect creatures from another world, tried to colonize Korriban. Big mistake. The Sith tribes actually stopped fighting each other long enough to deal with these bugs. They drove the Killiks off their planet so hard that nobody else tried to mess with Korriban for thousands of years. After that, the Sith went right back to their favorite hobby, fighting each other. This constant warfare made them stronger, meaner, and more connected to the dark side with every passing century. While other civilizations were discovering art and music, the Sith were perfecting new ways to destroy their enemies. For over 70,000 years, Korriban was nothing but scattered tribes beating each other into the sand. No unity, no empire, just endless bloodshed under the red sun. Then everything changed when one child was born different from all the others. Around 28,000 BBY, a baby came into the world with skin as black as space itself. Not red like every other Sith, but pure jet black. The elders knew what this meant. Ancient prophecies had talked about this moment for generations. This child would be the Sith Ari, which basically meant the ultimate Sith Lord, the chosen one who would unite all the tribes. That baby grew up to be King Adas, and he lived up to every bit of that prophecy. Through a combination of raw power and natural leadership, Adas started conquering every tribe on Korriban. Some joined him willingly because they recognized his strength. Others had to be beaten into submission. Either way, they all ended up bowing to the black-skinned king. For the first time in their entire history, all the Sith tribes answered to one ruler. Adas created the first real Sith monarchy, with himself sitting on top of the pyramid. Anyone who challenged his rule got crushed so completely that eventually people stopped trying. The constant civil wars that had defined Korriban for millennia finally came to an end. Here's the really crazy part. King Adas ruled for 300 years, 3 full centuries of absolute power. The Sith species naturally lived way longer than humans, and Adas used every one of those years to build something that had never existed before. A real Sith empire with laws, structure, and purpose beyond just random violence. Under Adas, the Sith became organized. They still worshipped the dark side and valued strength above everything else. But now that strength was pointed in the same direction. Instead of wasting energy fighting each other, they built cities, developed their own technology, and created a culture that would last for thousands of years. The traditions Adus established became the foundation for everything the Sith would become. Absolute rule by the strongest, dark side worship as the official religion, the belief that power was the only thing that mattered. These ideas got baked into Sith society so deeply that they never really went away, even long after Adus was gone. By Sith standards, this was actually a peaceful time. Sure, Adus still executed anyone who opposed him, but that was way better than the constant tribal warfare from before. For 3 centuries, Korriban knew something it had never experienced: stability. The Sith were still violent and cruel, but at least they were violent and cruel with a purpose. This was just the beginning. King Adus had taken a planet full of warring tribes and turned them into an empire. But that empire was still stuck on one desert world at the edge of known space. The Sith had no idea that beyond their borders, massive galactic civilizations were rising and falling. They were about to find out the hard way that Korriban wasn't as isolated as they thought. The stage was set. The Sith had their king, their empire, and their connection to the dark side. All they needed was the technology to take their brand of evil to the stars. And that technology was coming, whether they wanted it or not. The Sith had been alone on their desert world for 300 years under King Adus. Then the most advanced civilization in the galaxy showed up at their doorstep, and everything changed forever. Around 27,700 BBY, strange ships appeared in Korriban's sky. These weren't traders or explorers looking to make friends. The Rakata had come to add another world to their infinite empire, and they picked the wrong planet to mess with. The Rakata were basically the tech gods of the ancient galaxy. They had hyperdrives that could jump between stars in seconds. They built machines powered by the Force itself. Their empire stretched across thousands of worlds, and every single one of those worlds had been conquered and controlled. Now it was Korriban's turn. When the Rakata landed, they probably expected the usual routine. Show up with superior technology, wave around some fancy weapons, and watch the primitive locals surrender. That's how it had worked on countless other planets. But the Sith weren't like other species. They had King Adus. Adus did something brilliant. Instead of immediately fighting these invaders with their impossible technology, he pretended to play nice. The Rakata wanted to control the Sith and strip Korriban of its resources. Adus acted interested, even friendly. He welcomed them, asked questions about their ships, and got them to show off their tech. The Rakata were happy to brag. They showed Adus their holocrons, these cube devices that could store entire libraries of knowledge. They explained how hyperdrives worked, how their ships could cross the galaxy in days instead of years. They even demonstrated some of their Force-powered weapons. The whole time, Adus was taking mental notes on everything. See, the Rakata made one fatal mistake. They assumed because the Sith didn't have spaceships, they were weak. They never bothered to learn that every single Sith was born connected to the dark side. They didn't realize they were trying to control an entire planet of Force users who had been perfecting violence for 100,000 years. Once Adus learned enough about Rakatan technology, he dropped the friendly act. The moment the Rakata tried to officially make Korriban part of their empire, Adus called every Sith warrior to war. Not just the soldiers either. Every man, woman, and child who could hold a weapon joined the fight. What followed was one of the bloodiest wars Korriban had ever seen. The Rakata had better weapons, better ships, and technology the Sith couldn't even understand. But the Sith had something the Rakata didn't expect. Raw, primal dark side power multiplied by an entire species working together for the first time in their history. The fighting was absolutely savage. Sith warriors charged through blaster fire that should have ended them, kept alive by pure dark side rage. They ripped Rakatan soldiers apart with the Force, turned their own technology against them, and fought with a fury that shocked even the battle-hardened Rakata. But the cost was enormous. Thousands of Sith died every single day. Entire cities were reduced to rubble. The desert ran red with blood from both sides. And through it all, King Adas was right there on the front lines, leading his people in their darkest hour. The war reached its climax in one final terrible battle. The details are lost to history, but we know how it ended. King Adas, the ruler who had united the Sith and led them for 3 centuries, gave his life to save his people. He died destroying the main Rakatan force, taking down so many of their soldiers that the survivors had no choice but to retreat. The Rakata fled Korriban and never came back. They'd won victories on 10,000 worlds, but this one desert planet, full of red-skinned warriors, had broken them. The Infinite Empire would conquer many more worlds after this, but they'd learned to stay away from the Sith. For the Sith, victory felt hollow. They'd kept their freedom, but the price was losing the only leader who had ever united them. King Adas was dead, and with him went 300 years of stability. But he'd left them 2 incredible gifts that would change their destiny forever. First, the Rakata had abandoned tons of their technology when they fled. Broken ships, damaged holocrons, weapons, and most importantly, working hyperdrives. The Sith might not have understood all of it yet, but they had the tools to figure it out. Second, Adas had created a holocron of his own before his death, storing all his knowledge and experience for future generations. Think about what this meant. The Sith went from a single-planet species with no space travel to suddenly having access to the most advanced technology in the galaxy. It was like going from horse-drawn carriages to sports cars overnight. They had ships that could travel between stars. They had weapons that could level cities. They had the keys to the entire galaxy. The transformation was instant and irreversible. The primitive Sith who had spent 100,000 years fighting in the desert were now a spacefaring civilization. They didn't fully understand the technology yet, but they learned fast. Within years, Sith ships were leaving Korriban to explore nearby systems. King Adas became a legend after his death, maybe even greater than when he was alive. Every Sith child grew up hearing about the Sithari, who united their people and died defeating impossible odds. His holocron became the most sacred artifact in Sith culture, containing the wisdom of their greatest leader. The Rakata Invasion had meant to control the Sith. Instead, it freed them from their single planet and gave them the tools to build an empire that would one day threaten the entire galaxy. The Infinite Empire had created their own worst enemy, and they didn't even know it yet. The moment King Adas fell, the Sith Empire exploded like a bomb. Every warlord, every general, Every power-hungry noble suddenly thought they deserved to be the next Sithari. What followed was 20,000 years of the most insane civil war you can imagine. Picture this. Dozens of Sith leaders all claiming to be the rightful heir to Uddis's throne. Each one controlling their own armies, their own cities, their own little kingdoms, and every single one of them trying to end all the others. The unity Uddis had built disappeared overnight, replaced by total chaos. Korriban turned into a graveyard, not because everyone died, though plenty did, but because these warring kings spent more time building massive tombs than actually ruling. Each leader wanted a pyramid bigger than the last guy's. They carved entire mountains into monuments to themselves. The planet that had been the heart of the Sith Empire became one giant cemetery where the living fought over the bones of the dead. But here's where things get interesting. Remember those Rakatan ships the Sith captured? While Korriban tore itself apart, smart Sith leaders used that technology to get off-world. They took their followers and flew to nearby planets, looking for new kingdoms to rule. They found Zeost first, a frozen world covered in snow and ice, but absolutely dripping with dark side energy. The Sith loved it so much, they made it their new capital. Then came Malachor V, a broken planet where the dark side was so strong it could drive people insane just by being there. Tund, Jagwada, Thule, and dozens of other worlds fell to Sith colonizers over the centuries. This expansion created what would be called Sith space, a whole region of the galaxy under Sith control. But it wasn't one empire anymore. Each planet had its own kings, its own armies, its own rules. They fought each other constantly, but at least now they had more room to spread out while doing it. During these 20,000 years, the Sith discovered something incredible. They could use the dark side to change living things, not just control them or destroy them, but actually reshape them into monsters. They called it Sith alchemy, and it was absolutely terrifying. The Sith started breeding war beasts that shouldn't exist. The Siluth was like a beetle the size of a building that could eat through steel. Warbirds were flying nightmares with razor wings that could slice through entire armies. The Gigantes were basically living siege weapons, creatures so massive they could tear down city walls with their bare hands. Around 17,000 BBY, someone got the bright idea to use these monsters in actual warfare. The Battle of Kol Sunor became legendary for all the wrong reasons. The Sith unleashed every horrible creature they'd created, and entire worlds got torn apart. Cities disappeared under swarms of monsters. Whole populations got eaten alive. It was so bad that even other Sith thought maybe they'd gone too far. But they didn't stop there. The Sith became obsessed with dark side sorcery, creating artifacts that could store incredible power, amulets that could control minds, talismans that granted near immortality, holocrons filled with forbidden knowledge. Every Sith sorcerer was trying to out-evil the last one. By 15,000 BBY, the Sith were getting bold enough to mess with the wider galaxy. They started secretly funding rebellions in the Galactic Republic, which had formed while the Sith were busy fighting each other. The Republic had no idea who was behind these uprisings, but they knew something dark was stirring out there. They started building up their navy, preparing for a threat they couldn't even name yet. The Sith also built hidden libraries and temples far from their own space. They put a massive library temple on Crais II that held secrets so dangerous they abandoned it around 14,000 BBY rather than let it fall into the wrong hands. Another archive called Vicious Tuan got built on Arcania around 7,000 BBY, right under the Republic's nose. Through all this chaos, a few strong leaders occasionally managed to unite parts of the Sith Empire. Around 7,000 BBY, a sorcerer king named Dathka Graush conquered 2/3 of Korriban using a talisman of incredible power. For about 50 years, he ruled with such cruelty that even hardened Sith warriors were shocked. Graush didn't just destroy his enemies. He turned their bodies into undead servants. He performed rituals that required thousands of sacrifices. He was so completely evil that his own advisors decided he had to go. They assassinated him in his sleep, probably the only time in Sith history where everyone agreed the king needed to die. Right after Graush died, his relative Hakagram Graush tried to take over. He lasted even less time before someone ended him too. This was the pattern for 20,000 years. A strong leader rises, rules for a while through pure terror, then gets overtaken by someone stronger or sneakier. Meanwhile, the rest of the galaxy completely forgot the Sith existed. 20,000 years is a long time. The Republic grew into a massive galactic government, and to them, the Sith became nothing but ancient myths. Legends about red-skinned demons from the edge of space. The Sith liked it that way. Hidden in their corner of the galaxy, they kept practicing their dark arts and fighting their endless wars. The Republic had no idea that out in the unknown regions, an entire civilization built on pure evil was growing stronger every century. By 7,000 BBY, the Sith were completely different from when Idus died. They'd spread across dozens of worlds. They'd mastered powers that could reshape life itself. And they'd been soaking in dark side energy for so long that evil had become their religion. The Sith species was ready for something new. All they needed was the right catalyst to unite them again. "20,000 years of chaos ended the day 12 strangers walked out of hyperspace and onto Korriban's red sand. These weren't explorers or conquerors. They were refugees from the losing side of a war, and they were about to change everything. Around 6,900 BBY, the Republic had just finished a massive conflict called the 100-Year Darkness. On one side, you had the Jedi Order fighting for peace and light. On the other, dark Jedi, who wanted to use the Force for power and control. The Darksiders lost badly, and the survivors got kicked out of Republic space forever. Leading this group of exiles were some seriously powerful Force users. Ajunta Pal, Zoxan, Karnes Mor, Sorzus Sin, and about 8 others. Back in the Republic, they were considered the worst kind of criminals. But when their ships crashed down on Korriban, they found something they never expected. An entire species that worshipped the dark side just like them. The Sith had never seen anything like these dark Jedi. Sure, the Sith species could use the Force, but it was raw and unfocused. These exiles had trained for decades in Jedi temples before turning dark. They could do things with the Force that seemed impossible. They had lightsabers, weapons made of pure energy. They understood technology the Sith had never dreamed of. To the native Sith, these 12 exiles looked like gods walking among mortals. and the Dark Jedi were smart enough to use that to their advantage. The records get fuzzy here, but we know what happened next. The Dark Jedi took over. Sorza Sin wrote in her journal that they removed the current king, Hakagram Grouch, right after they arrived. No long war, no big battle. Just 12 Force users walking into the palace and declaring themselves the new rulers of the entire Sith species. Here's the crazy part. It worked. The Sith accepted these outsiders as their leaders almost immediately. Maybe it was their superior Force powers. Maybe it was the advanced technology. Or maybe after 20,000 years of constant civil war, the Sith were just ready for someone, anyone, to bring order to the chaos. Ajunta Pall became the first official Dark Lord of the Sith, a title that would define galactic history for the next 7,000 years. The Sith had a word for it in their own language, Gen-Ari, which basically meant Supreme Overlord. But from this point on, the name Sith would mean something completely different. See, the Dark Jedi didn't just rule over the Sith species, they became them. Over the next few generations, the human exiles and the red-skinned natives started having children together. The bloodlines mixed, creating a new hybrid race that was part human, part Sith species, and 100% devoted to the dark side. This is when Sith stopped being just the name of a species and became the name of an entire philosophy. Anyone who followed the dark side teachings of these new lords could call themselves Sith, regardless of what color their skin was or where they came from. The Dark Jedi brought a level of organization the Sith had never had before. They created the Sith Order, a strict hierarchy with the Dark Lord at the top, lesser lords below him, and then thousands of warriors and servants. They took the Massassi, a subspecies of Sith who were bigger and stronger than average, and turned them into an elite warrior caste. One of their first decisions was moving the capital. Korriban had been the center of Sith civilization forever, but it was a desert wasteland covered in tombs. The new Dark Lords chose Ziost instead, an ice planet where the dark side was so strong you could almost taste it in the air. Korriban didn't get abandoned, though. It became the sacred burial ground where every Sith Lord would build their tomb. The construction projects that followed were incredible. The Dark Lords combined their Force knowledge with Sith sorcery to build temples that touched the clouds. They carved entire mountains into monuments. Every tomb was bigger and more elaborate than the last, designed to last forever and prove the power of whoever was buried inside. But the real revolution was in how they used the Force. The native Sith had always been naturally connected to the dark side, but they used it like a club. The Dark Jedi had spent years learning precise Force techniques. When you combined that training with Sith alchemy and sorcery, you got something terrifying. The transformation was complete by 6900 BBY. What had been a fractured species fighting endless civil wars was now the old Sith Empire, sometimes called the First Sith Empire. The Republic had no idea what they'd created by exiling those Dark Jedi. They thought they were getting rid of a problem, sending their criminals to die in unknown space. Instead, they'd given those criminals an entire empire of natural dark side users to rule. The Sith species gave the Dark Jedi the army they needed. The Dark Jedi gave the Sith the leadership and knowledge they'd been missing. For the first time since King Adas died, the Sith were truly united. Not under a single king this time, but under an entire order of Dark Lords who all shared the same vision. They wanted power. They wanted control. And now They had an entire civilization dedicated to getting both. The funny thing is, the Republic thought the threat was over. They'd won the 100-year darkness, exiled the bad guys, and gone back to their peaceful lives. They had no clue that out in the unknown regions, those exiles hadn't died or given up. The Sith Empire was reborn, stronger and more dangerous than ever. And it would stay hidden in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to remind the galaxy that the dark side never truly dies. For over 1,000 years after the Dark Jedi took over, the Sith Empire grew in secret. Then around 5100 BBY, one ruler turned their hidden kingdom into something legendary. His name was Marka Ragnos, and his century of rule would be remembered as the absolute peak of Sith power. Marka Ragnos was different from any Dark Lord before him. He was a half-breed, part red-skinned Sith, part human descended from the original exiles. This mixed heritage gave him something special. He had the natural dark side connection of the Sith species combined with the refined Force techniques of the Dark Jedi. The result was a being so powerful that nobody dared challenge him for over 100 years. But Ragnos wasn't just strong, he was smart, really smart. While previous Dark Lords had ruled through fear alone, Ragnos played a different game. He understood that the biggest threat to his power wasn't enemies from outside. It was the other Sith Lords under him who wanted his throne. So Ragnos did something brilliant. Instead of trying to crush every potential rival, he made them fight each other. He'd whisper to one lord that another was plotting against them. He'd promote two ambitious Sith to the same position and watch them tear each other apart. Anyone who got too powerful would mysteriously face impossible challenges that ended their careers. Through this manipulation, Ragnos kept the Sith Empire stable for over a century. No civil wars, no major rebellions. Under his rule, the Empire prospered. Cities grew, trade flourished, and the Sith weren't wasting resources fighting themselves. This was the Golden Age of the Sith Empire. Not because they conquered the galaxy or defeated their enemies, but because for one brief moment in their history, they actually had peace. Well, peace by Sith standards anyway. There was still plenty of violence and dark side worship, but it was organized violence with a purpose, not random chaos. The Empire during this time was massive. They controlled over 100 worlds within what they called Sith space, all hidden inside the Stygian caldera, a nebula that made navigation nearly impossible for outsiders. Each planet had its own governors and armies, but they all answered to Ragnos. It was a real, functioning empire with laws, taxes, and a military that could rival anything in the galaxy. But here's what made Ragnos truly unique among Sith rulers. He was an isolationist. He absolutely refused to expand beyond their hidden corner of space. This drove younger Sith Lords crazy. They had all this power, all these ships and warriors, and Ragnos wouldn't let them use it. Ragnos had good reasons, though. He knew the history. He remembered the stories passed down from the original Dark Jedi exiles about the Republic, and especially about the Jedi Order. While younger Sith thought these were just myths or exaggerated tales, Ragnos believed every word. He knew that somewhere out there was a massive galactic government with thousands of Jedi Knights who had already defeated Darksiders once before. The math was simple in his mind. The Sith Empire was strong, but it had maybe a few hundred true Sith Lords. The Republic had thousands of systems, and who knew how many Jedi? If the two powers met before the Sith were ready, it would be a disaster. Better to stay hidden, keep growing stronger, and wait for the perfect moment. This policy worked perfectly. For Ragnos's entire reign, the Republic had absolutely no idea the Sith Empire existed. To them, the Sith were ancient history, a threat that had been dealt with thousands of years ago. Some scholars studied old Sith artifacts, but nobody believed there was an actual empire of Darksiders still out there. The reverse was also true. Most ordinary Sith citizens had never heard of the Republic. To them, the galaxy consisted of Sith space and empty void beyond. The stories of Jedi and the Republic became bedtime tales, things parents told children about the boogeyman Jedi who would come for them if they weren't strong enough. For over a century, these two massive civilizations existed in the same galaxy without knowing about each other. It was like having two giants living in the same house, but in different rooms, neither one aware the other was there. Then, around 5000 BBY, Marka Ragnos finally ran out of time. Even Sith couldn't live forever, and after more than 100 years of rule, the great Dark Lord passed away. His funeral on Korriban was the most elaborate ceremony the Sith had ever seen. Every lord, every warrior, everyone who was anyone in the Empire came to pay their respects. But even in his final moments, Ragnos had one last move to play. According to witnesses, his spirit actually appeared at his own funeral, floating above his tomb like a ghost of pure dark side energy. He had one final warning for his followers about the challenges ahead, though in typical Sith fashion, he was pretty vague about the specifics. With Ragnos gone, two candidates emerged for Dark Lord, and they couldn't have been more different. Ludo Kresh was the conservative choice. Older, cautious, believing in continuing Ragnos's isolationist policies. Keep hidden, keep growing stronger. Naga Sadow was the opposite. Younger, ambitious, hungry for conquest. The Empire had been hiding long enough. Time to expand and show the galaxy the Sith's power. The funeral turned into a political battleground. The two would-be Dark Lords faced off right there in front of Ragnos's tomb. The Golden Age ended the moment Marka Ragnos stopped breathing. A century of stability was about to be replaced by ambition and conflict. And the spark that would ignite this powder keg was already on its way. Two siblings looking for hyperspace shortcuts accidentally started a war that would destroy an empire. Gav and Jory Daragon were just trying to make a living mapping new trade routes when their ship's computer glitched and sent them somewhere nobody was supposed to go. In 5000 BBY, their ship dropped out of hyperspace right above Korriban, just as every important Sith in the galaxy was gathered for Marka Ragnos's funeral. Talk about bad timing. The Sith hadn't seen outsiders in thousands of years. And suddenly, here were two humans from the Republic dropping in uninvited. The Sith grabbed the Daragons immediately. The entire Empire went into panic mode. Were these scouts for a Republic invasion? Had their ancient enemies finally found them? The Sith Council called an emergency meeting to figure out what to do with these unexpected visitors. This was exactly the opportunity Naga Sadow had been waiting for. While Ludo Kresh was screaming about Republic invasions and demanding they prepare defenses, Sadow saw something else entirely. He saw a chance to unite the Sith under his leadership and finally expand beyond their hidden corner of space. Sado pulled off one of the sneakiest moves in Sith history. He secretly had his own agents break the Daragons out of prison, then made it look like a Republic rescue mission. They planted fake evidence, staged battle damage, even left behind Republic-style weapons. When the other Sith Lords saw this, they bought the lie completely. The Republic was coming for them. Fear is a powerful motivator, especially for Sith. Suddenly, all those lords who couldn't agree on anything were united behind one idea. If the Republic was planning to attack, the Sith needed to strike first. And who better to lead them than Naga Sado, the one lord brave enough to take the fight to their enemies? Ludo Kresh figured out what Sado was doing and tried to stop him. He gathered his fleet and attacked Sado's fortress, hoping to expose the deception. But Sado was ready. The battle was brutal but quick. Kresh's flagship exploded in a massive fireball, and everyone assumed he was gone for good. With Kresh apparently out of the picture, Sado declared himself Dark Lord of the Sith and started preparing for war. He let Jory Daragon escape back to Republic space, but not out of kindness. He'd hidden a tracking device on her ship. She would lead him straight to the heart of the Republic. Sado assembled the largest invasion force the Sith had ever created. They followed Jory's hyperspace trail out of the Stygian caldera, ready to conquer everything. The Republic never saw it coming. Sith fleets appeared everywhere at once. They hit the Koros system, attacked Fuerost, and struck Coruscant itself. Republic citizens who thought the Sith were myths suddenly had warriors marching through their streets. On Coruscant, Sith forces actually made it all the way to the Senate Hall. Senators who'd been debating trade regulations minutes earlier were suddenly running for their lives. At Koros Major, Empress Teta's capital city, the fighting was so intense that the planet's defenders nearly broke completely. Sado had a secret weapon making his forces seem unstoppable. From his command ship orbiting a star called Primus Golud, he used Sith meditation techniques to create illusions on a massive scale. One Sith ship would suddenly look like 10. 100 warriors would appear to be 1,000. The Republic forces were fighting ghosts half the time and couldn't tell what was real. But Sado made one crucial mistake. He'd kept Jory's brother Gav as an apprentice, thinking he could turn him into a loyal Sith. Gav played along at first, learning Sith techniques and even helping plan attacks. But when he realized Sado had used his sister as bait and was willing to sacrifice anyone for victory, Gav turned against his master. Gav disrupted Sado's meditation and sent the Republic fleet the coordinates of Sado's command ship. The moment those illusions dropped, everything changed. Republic forces realized half the Sith fleet wasn't even real. Empress Teta rallied her troops. The Jedi Uru and Odan-Ur led counterattacks, and the Republic Navy pushed forward with new confidence. The Sith invasion started falling apart. Republic forces drove them back from Koros Major and pursued them toward Primus Golud. Sado, realizing he was about to lose everything, made a desperate choice. Using ancient Sith sorcery, he caused the star Primus Golud to explode in a massive supernova. The explosion vaporized Sado's own forces, who couldn't escape in time, but it also destroyed the pursuing Republic fleet. In the chaos, Sado's remaining ships fled back to Sith space. But even there, he wasn't safe. Ludo Kresh had survived their earlier battle and was waiting with his own fleet when Sado returned to Korriban. The two Sith factions tore into each other in one last fight for control. Sado's forces rammed Kresh's flagship, finally finishing him off for real this time. But neither Sith Lord won that day. Right as their battle ended, the Republic fleet arrived in Sith space. Gav Daragon had given them the coordinates with his final breath, and now the Republic was coming for payback. They smashed through the exhausted Sith fleets like they were made of paper. Naga Sado ran. He took a handful of loyal Massassi warriors and fled to the Denarii Nova system. When Republic ships chased him, he pulled the same trick again, making the star flare up and destroying his pursuers. Then he disappeared completely, vanishing into uncharted space. The remaining Sith tried to resist, but it was hopeless. The Republic swept through Sith space. The Great Hyperspace War was over. The war shattered the Sith Empire completely. Their fleet was destroyed, leadership gone, military might broken, all because two explorers took a wrong turn. The Sith Empire was finished, or so everyone thought. The Republic wasn't satisfied with just winning the war. They wanted to make sure the Sith could never, ever come back. What followed the Great Hyperspace War was less of a cleanup and more of a complete erasure. Around 4999 BBY, Republic and Jedi forces poured into Sith space like a tidal wave. This wasn't about occupation or conquest. They wanted to wipe out every trace that the Sith Empire had ever existed. Jedi-led armies swept across Korriban, Zeost, and every other Sith world they could find. The ancient Sith capital of Zeost, that frozen world that had been the Empire's heart for thousands of years, got hit the worst. When the Republic was done with it, the entire planet was a wasteland. Cities that had stood since the time of the Dark Jedi were reduced to rubble. Korriban became a ghost world, its sacred tombs broken open and looted. The planet's surface turned into lifeless desert. The Sith species themselves nearly vanished completely. The red-skinned people who had given the dark side order its name were scattered to the winds. Most who survived the war didn't survive what came after. Their culture, their language, their entire way of life got erased in a matter of years. But not everyone gave up. While the Republic was busy destroying everything, some Sith were making plans to survive. The most important of these survivors was a Sith Lord nobody had heard of before the war. His name was Vishit, though he'd been born with the name Tenebrae on a planet called Medrias. Vishit was different from other Sith Lords. While Naga Sado had been fighting his war and losing, he'd been gathering the smartest Sith he could find and telling them the Empire was doomed. He convinced them that their only chance was to run, to hide, to rebuild somewhere the Republic would never find them. When the Republic invasion began, Vishit was ready. He took thousands of Sith loyalists, anyone who would follow him, and led them into the unknown regions of space. Not just a few ships, but entire fleets carrying soldiers, workers, families, anyone who believed in the Sith way of life. They vanished into uncharted space while their homeworlds burned behind them. Other Sith tried different escape plans. Elko Kresh, who was related to the late Ludo Kresh, gathered pirates and mercenaries for a counterattack. He figured if he could hit the Republic hard enough, maybe they'd back off, but he never got the chance to try. Records say he passed away in an accident before his fleet could launch. On the remote planet Thule, a regiment of Sith soldiers went into hiding, waiting for orders that would never come. They stayed hidden for generations, not knowing their empire had fallen, still believing reinforcements would arrive someday. On Ashas Ree, a Sith Lord carrying King Adis's ancient holocron never made it to safety. The holocron, containing thousands of years of Sith knowledge, ended up buried and forgotten. Meanwhile, the Jedi were destroying every piece of Sith knowledge they could find. They burned libraries, smashed artifacts, and hunted down relics. The great library Vishas Tuan on Arcania got demolished. Teams of Jedi shadows searched for holocrons and texts. The Jedi kept a few holocrons locked away for study, like Naga Sadow's, but everything else got destroyed or hidden. Within a generation, most people thought the Sith were just stories, but the Sith weren't quite gone. Naga Sadow himself had survived his final battle and fled to Yavin 4, a jungle moon in the Outer Rim. He took his last Massassi warriors with him, and together they built massive pyramid temples that would channel dark side energy. Sadow went into a kind of hibernation there, using Sith sorcery to preserve himself, waiting for a chance to return that would never come. More importantly, Vishiit and his followers had found a new home. Deep in the unknown regions, on a jungle planet called Droman Kas, they started over. Vishiit declared himself the new Sith Emperor. Not just Dark Lord, but Emperor, and began rebuilding everything they'd lost. This empire in exile would stay hidden for 1,000 years, growing stronger while the galaxy forgot they existed. The fall of the old Sith Empire left scars across the galaxy. Deactivated Sith war droids would sometimes wake up centuries later and attack whoever was nearby. Ancient weapons would be discovered in ruins, still dangerous after all that time. Dark side temples on forgotten worlds would corrupt treasure hunters who stumbled across them. But the biggest legacy was the idea itself. The Sith ideology, the philosophy that power was everything and the strong should rule the weak, that survived even when the Empire didn't. The dark side would keep calling to Force users, tempting them with easy power, creating new Sith even when there was no Empire to train them. The Republic thought they'd ended the Sith threat forever. The Jedi believed they'd protected the galaxy from the dark side once and for all. They were both wrong. Out in the darkness between stars, the Sith Emperor was building a new empire, one that would someday return stronger than ever. The old Sith Empire was gone, its worlds in ruins, its people scattered or destroyed. But the Sith Emperor had saved its spirit, its knowledge, and most importantly, its hunger for revenge. The Sith would remember what the Republic had done. They would remember and they would wait, and one day they would make the galaxy pay for what happened after the Great Hyperspace War. For now, though, the galaxy believed the Sith were gone. The Republic rebuilt, the Jedi stood guard, and everyone moved on. Nobody suspected that in unknown space, the Sith Empire was being reborn under Vishiit, preparing for a return that would shake the galaxy. The Republic thought they'd wiped out the Sith completely. They were wrong. On a jungle moon called Yavin 4, something dark was still breathing, and it was about to pass its poison to a new generation. Naga Sadow hadn't just disappeared after the Great Hyperspace War. He'd gone into a kind of suspended animation on Yavin 4, using Sith sorcery to keep his spirit alive long after his body should have given out. His Massassi warriors stayed loyal, building temples and keeping watch over their master for centuries. Over time, Sado's dark experiments changed them into something barely human anymore, more like savage predators than the warriors they'd once been. 600 years passed. Then, around 4400 BBY, a failed Jedi showed up looking for power, and everything changed. Frida Nad was supposed to be a Jedi Knight. He'd trained on Ossus, studied the Force, done everything right. But when the time came for his promotion, the Masters said no. They saw something dark in him, something dangerous. Nad didn't take rejection well. In his rage, he struck down his own master and ran from the Republic, searching for the power the Jedi wouldn't give him. His search led him to old legends about the Sith, and those legends pointed to Yavin 4. When Nad landed on that jungle moon, he found exactly what he was looking for. Naga Sado's spirit was still there, waiting, and it recognized a kindred soul in this angry young fallen Jedi. Sado taught Nad everything, all the Sith secrets, all the dark knowledge that had been passed down since the time of King Adus. Nad absorbed it all like a sponge, growing stronger with every lesson. But here's the thing about the Sith. They don't share power. Once Nad learned everything Sado could teach, he turned on his master and destroyed what was left of Sado's spirit completely. The last direct link to the old Sith Empire was gone, but its knowledge lived on in Frida Nad. Armed with Sith powers and artifacts, Nad went looking for a kingdom to rule. He found it on Onderon, a planet in the Inner Rim with a primitive civilization that had never seen anything like a Force user before. When Nad's ship landed in the city of Iziz, around 4400 BBY, the locals thought a god had arrived. Nad let them think that. He used his dark powers to take control of the entire planet, crowning himself king of Onderon. Anyone who opposed his rule got thrown outside the city walls to be eaten by the wild beasts that roamed Onderon's wilderness. It was a simple system: obey or become dinner. But something unexpected happened. The people who got exiled didn't all get eaten. Some of them survived, learned to tame the beasts, even ride them. Over generations, these outcasts became the Beast Riders, building their own society in the wilderness and constantly attacking the city that had thrown them out. This conflict, called the Beast Wars, would rage for centuries. Frida Nad ruled for a normal human lifetime, then passed away. But he'd learned Sado's trick about preserving his spirit. Even after his body was gone, Nad's ghost haunted his tomb beneath the palace, whispering dark advice to his descendants. His children and grandchildren, like Queen Amanoa and King Omin, kept ruling Onderon with Sith powers, keeping the dark tradition alive. For 400 years, Onderon stayed under dark influence. The Beast Wars raged. The royal family used Sith magic, and Frida Nad's ghost pulled the strings. It was like a pocket of the old Sith Empire had survived on this one planet. Around 4000 BBY, Onderon wanted to join the Republic. The Jedi sent a team led by Master Arca Jeth and including Ulic Keldroma to help. The Jedi quickly figured out something was seriously wrong in Iziz. Queen Amanoa was using dark side powers, and the whole palace reeked of Sith influence. Working with the Beast Riders, the Jedi confronted Amanoa in Frida Nad's tomb. Master Arca used the light side to drive away Nad's spirit, and without her dark patron's power, Aminoa collapsed. Gallia, Aminoa's daughter who'd fallen in love with the Beast Rider leader, took the throne. For a brief moment, it looked like Onderon was finally free of the Sith influence. The Jedi even tried to move Frida Nad's sarcophagus off-world to prevent any more problems. But Nad's followers weren't done. In 3998 BBY, King Omen and other cultists launched the Frida Nad Uprising, trying to restore the dark side's grip on Onderon. The Jedi stopped them, but not before something crucial happened. During the uprising, Frida Nad's spirit appeared one last time. Before vanishing forever, he passed his knowledge to two young aristocrats from the Empress Teta system who'd come to observe. Their names were Satal and Alima Keto, and they led a group called the Krath that was obsessed with Sith legends. Nad gave them real Sith teachings, not just legends. He showed them actual dark side techniques, gave them Sith artifacts, and told them they would carry on the tradition. Then his spirit finally faded away, but the damage was done. The Sith knowledge had been passed on again. This is how the Sith survived even when their empire was gone. Not through armies or fleets, but through individuals passing dark knowledge from master to student. Naga Sadao to Frida Nad. Frida Nad to the Krath. Each time the chain looked like it might break, someone new picked up the tradition. The Jedi thought they'd ended the threat on Onderon, but they'd missed the two Krath cultists who'd learned Nad's secrets. The Onderon conflict wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. The shadow of the old Sith Empire kept stretching forward, and it was about to fall across the galaxy once again. The Krath thought they were playing with ancient Sith magic. They had no idea they were about to unleash something that would nearly destroy the Jedi Order forever. Remember those two aristocrats from the Empress Teta system who learned from Frida Nad's ghost? Satal and Alima Keto took that dark knowledge home and used it to take over 7 entire star systems. In 3997 BBY, they launched a coup, removing the government and declaring themselves rulers of what they called the Krath Holy Crusade. The Krath weren't just another dark side cult. They had real Sith teachings, real power, and real armies. When they declared war on the Republic, they actually started winning. At the Battle of Koros Major, they crushed Republic forces. At a Jedi gathering on Deneba, Krath warriors attacked and struck down Master Arca Jeth, the same Jedi who'd freed Onderon from Frida Nad's influence. That last one hit Ulic Qel-Droma hard. Arca had been his mentor, his guide, everything. Ulic came up with a desperate plan. He would pretend to join the Krath, learn their secrets from the inside, then destroy them. It was the kind of plan that sounds good until you actually try it. Ulic went to the Krath stronghold on Sinagar and convinced them he'd turned to the dark side. The problem was, pretending to use dark powers is like pretending to swim in quicksand. The more you struggle, the deeper you sink. Between Sith poisons and Alima Keto's manipulation, Ulic stopped pretending and actually fell to the dark side for real. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, another Jedi was falling into darkness through a completely different path. Exar Kun was everything the Jedi didn't want in a student. Brilliant, yes, but also arrogant and hungry for knowledge the Masters said was forbidden. He didn't care about their warnings. Around 3997 BBY, Kun went looking for Sith secrets on Korriban and Yavin 4. the old strongholds of the Empire. On Yavin 4, he found more than dusty ruins. Freedon Nad's spirit was still lingering there, and it recognized a perfect candidate for corruption. Nad taught Kun the darkest Sith secrets, showed him how to command the Massassi warriors still living on Yavin, even helped him find Naga Sadow's ancient warship. But Kun was nobody's apprentice. Once he'd learned everything, he destroyed Nad's spirit completely, just like Nad had done to Sadow before him. It was becoming a Sith tradition. Learn everything from your master, then get rid of them. By 3996 BBY, you had two powerful fallen Jedi, Ulic commanding the Krath, and Exar Kun ruling Yavin 4. When they met on Sinagar, they almost destroyed each other fighting. Then, the ghost of Marka Ragnos appeared. The ancient Dark Lord from the Golden Age manifested and declared Exar Kun the new Dark Lord of the Sith, with Ulic as his apprentice. Just like that, the Sith were back. Not just random Darksiders or cultists, but actual Sith with a real Dark Lord, just like in the days of the old Empire. Exar Kun united everything under his command. The Krath forces, the Massassi warriors, and then he added something else. He challenged Mandalore the Indomitable to single combat, won, and gained the loyalty of all the Mandalorian Crusaders. The Brotherhood of the Sith was born, and it had the military power to take on the entire Republic. The war that followed was swift and terrible. Ulic led an attack on Coruscant itself, fighting his way into the heart of the Republic. He got captured by his own brother Kay and his former lover, Nomi Sunrider. But that just gave Exar Kun an excuse to show his power. Kun stormed the Senate building with Massassi warriors and dark side illusions, taking down the Supreme Chancellor and freeing Ulic right in front of everyone. But Kun's most devastating attack wasn't with armies. He reached out through the Force to Jedi students across the galaxy and turned them against their masters. In a single moment, dozens of Jedi masters fell to their own apprentices. The Jedi Order lost more members in that one day than in years of warfare. Kun and Ulic pressed their advantage, attacking the Jedi library world of Ossus. They wanted the ancient knowledge stored there, all those Sith artifacts the Jedi had been hoarding since the Great Hyperspace War. The battle was savage. Kun's forces triggered something called the Kron Cluster Supernova, devastating the entire Ossus system. During the fighting, something broke inside Ulic. He faced his brother Kay and struck him down. His grief shattered the dark side's hold. He surrendered to Nomi Sunrider, who cut him off from the Force entirely. Without the Force, without the dark side clouding his mind, Ulic saw clearly for the first time in years. He agreed to help the Republic and led their fleet straight to Exar Kun's stronghold on Yavin 4. Kun knew he couldn't win against the combined might of the Jedi Order, but he had one last card to play. Using the darkest Sith sorcery, he performed a ritual that destroyed his physical body but bound his spirit to the temples of Yavin 4. His Massassi followers gave their life force to fuel the spell, and when the Jedi's attack came, they found nothing but empty temples and the lingering presence of something evil. The Great Sith War was over in less than a year, but nearly brought the Republic to its knees. The Brotherhood of the Sith was scattered. This war proved the Sith didn't need an empire to be dangerous. Two fallen Jedi with enough power could unite the dark side cults and threaten the galaxy. The Republic rebuilt, But Exar Kun's spirit waited on Yavin 4. The old Sith Empire was gone, but its shadow kept creating new threats. We've already made an incredible video breaking down the Jedi Civil War in detail, so here's the quick version of how the old Sith Empire's legacy created yet another galactic crisis. The Mandalorian Wars ended around 3960 BBY, but for two Jedi heroes named Revan and Malak, the war wasn't over. They chased the fleeing Mandalorians into the unknown regions, and that's where everything went wrong. Out in that uncharted space, they found something nobody expected to find. The Sith Emperor, the Sith Lord who escaped with thousands of followers when the old Empire fell. He'd been hiding out there for 1,000 years, rebuilding, waiting. When Revan and Malak stumbled into his territory, the Sith Emperor saw an opportunity. He twisted their minds, turned them to the dark side, and sent them back to the Republic as his weapons. But Revan had his own plans. Along with falling to the dark side, he'd discovered something called the Star Forge, an ancient Rakata factory that could build endless fleets using dark side energy. Think of it as a shipyard that never needed raw materials, just pure evil to keep running. With this incredible resource, Revan decided to build his own Sith Empire. By 3959 BBY, Revan had crowned himself Dark Lord of the Sith, with Malak as his apprentice. They reopened the ancient Sith Academy on Korriban, training fallen Jedi who'd lost faith in the Council during the Mandalorian Wars. Veterans who'd served under Revan followed him into darkness, giving him experienced crews for his Star Forge-built fleet. The interesting part about Revan's empire was his motivation. Some say he wasn't just conquering for power. He knew about Sith Emperor's hidden empire in the unknown regions, and he wanted to unite the galaxy under his rule to prepare for that greater threat. Whether that makes him a villain or a misguided hero is still debated. In 3958 BBY, Revan and Malak struck. The Republic, still recovering from the Mandalorian Wars, suddenly faced an invasion led by their own former heroes. Revan's tactical genius, combined with unlimited ships from the Star Forge, made his forces nearly unstoppable. Within a year, his empire controlled huge sections of the Outer Rim. The Jedi came up with a desperate plan. A young knight named Bastila Shan, who had a rare gift for battle meditation that could turn entire fleet battles, led a strike team to capture Revan. During the mission, something unexpected happened. Malak, seeing his chance to take power, fired on his own master's ship. Revan survived but was knocked unconscious and captured. The Jedi did something unprecedented. They erased his memories and gave him a new identity, hoping to use him to find the Star Forge. Meanwhile, Malak took over as the new Dark Lord and became even more brutal than Revan had been. What happened next is one of the strangest stories in galactic history. The mind-wiped Revan, not knowing who he really was, went on a quest with Bastila to stop the Sith. Along the way, he gradually discovered his true identity. When he finally remembered everything, he had a choice: reclaim his throne as Dark Lord, or stop Malak and save the Republic. Revan chose redemption. In 3956 BBY, he led the Republic fleet to the Star Forge and confronted his former apprentice. The battle between Revan and Malak decided everything. Master faced student one last time, and when it was over, Malak had fallen and the Star Forge was destroyed. The Jedi Civil War was over. but the damage was catastrophic. The Jedi Order was nearly extinct, with less than 100 knights surviving. Malak had bombarded the Jedi enclave on Dantooine and hunted Jedi across the galaxy. The Republic was exhausted, having fought 2 major wars back-to-back. Revan's Sith Empire collapsed without leadership, but it didn't disappear. Sith warlords carved up territories, dark Jedi went into hiding, and thousands of Sith soldiers scattered across the galaxy. The largest group of survivors gathered at the edges of known space, setting up the next crisis. As for Revan himself, he didn't stick around to help rebuild. Soon after defeating Malak, he left for the unknown regions again. He remembered the Sith Emperor's true empire out there and knew they were the real threat. He went alone, hoping to stop them before they could attack the weakened Republic. The Jedi Civil War showed a disturbing pattern. Every time the Sith seemed defeated, they came back in a new form. The old empire fell, but its knowledge created Freeden Nad. Nad's teachings spawned Exar Kun. And now Revan's empire, born from encountering the Sith Emperor's hidden survivors, had nearly destroyed the Republic. The scariest part was that each resurrection was faster. The gap between the Great Hyperspace War and Freeden Nad, 600 years. Nad to Exar Kun, 400. Exar Kun to Revan, just 40. The Sith were adapting, returning quicker each time. What made Revan's empire unique was how it bridged the old and new. He'd reopened Korriban, used ancient Sith teachings, but combined them with modern military tactics and technology. His empire felt like the old Sith Empire reborn with a modern twist, complete with a proper academy and hierarchy. The Starforge itself was a reminder that the galaxy's ancient history held weapons beyond imagination. The Rakata had built it millennia ago, the same aliens who'd fought King Adas. That old technology, combined with Sith knowledge, had nearly toppled the Republic twice now. Revan's story proved something disturbing. Even the greatest heroes could fall. Revan had saved the Republic, been celebrated as a champion, and still became what he'd fought against. The Republic tried to rebuild, but they were on shaky ground. The Jedi were almost gone, and they had no idea that Vashiyet's true Sith Empire was still watching. The old Sith Empire's legacy had survived another cycle. After Malak fell, the galaxy thought it could finally breathe again. They were wrong. 3 Sith Lords crawled out of the wreckage of Revan's empire, and they were about to finish what all the previous Sith had started: the complete extinction of the Jedi Order. The Sith Triumvirate, as they were called, were unlike previous Sith Lords. Darth Traya was a former Jedi who understood the Force in terrifying ways. Darth Sion was held together by pure hatred, and Darth Nihilus was a wound in the Force that consumed planets just by existing. These 3 had survived the Jedi Civil War by hiding on Malachor V, a planet so saturated with dark side energy from an ancient battle that most people couldn't even land there without going insane. They'd taken over the Treyus Academy, an old Sith training ground, and from there they launched what they called the First Jedi Purge. Between 3956 and 3951, the Triumvirate waged a shadow war unlike anything the galaxy had seen. No massive fleets, no dramatic invasions, just silent, systematic elimination of every Jedi they could find. Their assassins would appear from nowhere, strike down a Jedi Master, and vanish before anyone knew what happened. The scariest part was Darth Nihilus. He'd become something that shouldn't exist, a being so consumed by hunger for the Force that he could drain entire planets of life. When Nihilus showed up at a world, every living thing would just wither away, their life force absorbed into his endless appetite. He wasn't even really human anymore, just hunger wearing a mask and robes. Within just 5 years, the Jedi Order went from barely surviving to practically extinct. The Council disbanded because there weren't enough members left to form one. Maybe half a dozen Jedi remained in the entire galaxy, all in hiding, all terrified that the assassins would find them next. By 3952 BBY, it looked like the Triumvirate had won. The Jedi were gone, the Republic had no Force users to defend it, and the Sith could operate completely unopposed. But then, as always happens with the Sith, they turned on each other. Darth Traya had trained both Sion and Nihilus, but her apprentices decided they didn't need her anymore. They cast her out of the Triumvirate, stripping her of her power and leaving her to wander the galaxy alone. Big mistake. Traya didn't just disappear, she found something better than revenge. She found a weapon. That weapon was Meetra Surik, known as the Jedi Exile. Meetra had been cut off from the Force years earlier as punishment for following Revan in the Mandalorian Wars. She was the only Jedi the Triumvirate couldn't sense, couldn't track, couldn't find. Traya, now calling herself Kreia again, became Meetra's mentor, guiding her on a path that would lead straight to the other two Sith Lords. In 3951 BBY, everything came to a head. Darth Nihilus tried to feed on the planet Telos 4, planning to consume millions of lives in one terrible feast. But Meetra Surik was ready for him. With help from Mandalore Canderous Ordo and a small team of allies, she boarded Nihilus's ship, the Ravager, and confronted the Lord of Hunger himself. Fighting Nihilus was like fighting starvation itself. He tried to drain Meetra's life force, but because she was a wound in the Force too, his power couldn't touch her properly. In the end, the thing that had consumed worlds fell to a single exiled Jedi. When Nihilus was defeated, his body just crumbled to nothing, leaving only his mask and robes behind. Darth Sion was next. The Lord of Pain had made himself immortal through sheer willpower, holding his broken body together through hatred alone. Every time someone struck him down, he'd just get back up, angrier than before. But Meetra didn't try to defeat him through combat. She talked to him, showed him that his immortality was really just an endless prison of suffering. For the first time in who knows how long, Sion chose to let go of his hatred. Without it, his body finally fell apart for good. That left Darth Traya, who'd been pulling strings the whole time. She'd returned to Malachor V and the Trayus Academy, resuming her role as Dark Lord. Her plan all along had been to use Surik to eliminate her rivals, then face the exile in one final confrontation that would determine the future of both Jedi and Sith. The duel in the Trias Core was more than a fight. It was a philosophical battle about the Force itself. Traya believed the Force controlled everyone's destiny and wanted to destroy it. Meetra represented choice and free will. When Meetra defeated Traya, the old woman seemed almost satisfied. With her passing, the last of the Triumvirate was gone. Malachor V was destroyed, taking the Trayus Academy with it. The first Jedi Purge was over. In just 5 years, The Sith Triumvirate had nearly succeeded where centuries of Sith empires had failed. They'd brought the Jedi to the edge of extinction using patience, planning, and targeted strikes instead of massive wars. But Mitra Surik had saved the Jedi Order. The surviving masters came out of hiding, new students began training, and the Order started to rebuild. For the first time in decades, there were no Sith Lords, no dark armies, no threats on the horizon. The Republic celebrated, thinking the Sith were finally gone. They had no idea that the Sith Emperor's true empire had been watching, preparing for their return. The Triumvirate had been the last echo of Revan's empire. Their defeat marked the end of one chapter, but it was far from over. The old Sith Empire's legacy had survived through another incarnation, proving that just 3 individuals could nearly destroy everything the Jedi had built. Remember how we said the Sith Emperor escaped with thousands of followers after the Great Hyperspace War? Well, 1,000 years later, he was ready to show the galaxy what he'd been building in the shadows. Vitiate, originally born as Tenebrae, had done something no other Sith had managed. When Naga Sado's empire was falling apart in 5000 BBY, the Sith Emperor gathered the remaining Sith Lords on his planet Nathema and performed a ritual so dark that it drained the life from an entire world. Every plant, every animal, every person on Nathema, including those Sith Lords who helped him, had their life force consumed to make Vitiate immortal. Now calling himself the Sith Emperor, Vitiate took the survivors who hadn't been at the ritual and led them on a 20-year journey into the unknown regions. Around 4975 BBY, they found Dromund Kaas, a jungle planet hidden by storms and forgotten by the galaxy. This would be their new home, their secret base to rebuild everything they'd lost. For the next 1300 years, while the Republic thought the Sith were extinct, Vitiate's true Sith Empire grew in complete secrecy. This wasn't some ragtag group of survivors either. They built a full civilization with a capital city, a military academy, a fleet to rival the Republic's, and a government structure that preserved all the old Sith traditions. The Empire had a dark council of 12 Sith Lords who handled day-to-day governance while the Emperor focused on his dark experiments. They had thousands of Sith warriors and inquisitors, all trained from childhood in academies that made the old Korriban Academy look soft. They maintained the pure-blood Sith species bloodlines and created a whole society where being Sith wasn't just about using the dark side, it was an entire culture. Vitiate even influenced events in the known galaxy without revealing himself. When Revan and Malak went looking for the Mandalorians in 3959 BBY, they found Vitiate's empire. He twisted them to the dark side and sent them back as his advanced scouts, though Revan eventually broke free and tried to stop him. Vitiate captured Revan and kept him prisoner for 300 years, drawing on his strength while postponing the invasion. By 3681 BY, after 13 centuries of preparation, Vitiate decided it was time. The Republic was still weak from all the recent wars. The Jedi Order had barely recovered. The moment was perfect. The true Sith Empire's return started with a bang. Imperial fleets suddenly appeared from nowhere, attacking dozens of systems simultaneously. They recaptured Korriban immediately, turning it back into a Sith academy. The Outer Rim fell within months. The Republic, which hadn't fought a real war in decades, was caught completely off guard. Leading the charge was Darth Malgus, a Sith warrior who would become the face of the invasion. There were dozens of other Sith lords commanding fleets and armies, but Malgus stood out for his tactical brilliance and absolute ruthlessness. The Republic forces couldn't match the Sith's preparation and coordination. This great galactic war lasted 28 years. Worlds changed hands multiple times. Entire star systems were devastated. The Republic would win a battle here. The Sith would conquer a planet there, back and forth in an endless grind. The war finally reached its climax in 3653 BBY with one of the boldest moves in military history. While Sith diplomats were negotiating peace talks on Alderaan, pretending to want an end to the fighting, a Sith fleet led by Darth Malgus launched a surprise attack on Coruscant itself. The sacking of Coruscant was devastating. Sith forces stormed the Jedi Temple, burned it to the ground, and held the entire planet hostage. With their capital in flames and no way to push the Sith out, the Republic had no choice but to sign the Treaty of Coruscant on whatever terms the Sith demanded. The treaty split the galaxy in half. The Sith Empire got to keep roughly half of all known space as their recognized territory. The Republic had to abandon dozens of systems and accept that the Sith Empire was now a legitimate government. After 1,300 years of hiding, the Sith were back as an official galactic power. What followed was called the Cold War, lasting from 3653 to around the 3620 BBY. Neither side was happy with the peace. The Republic wanted their territory back. The Sith wanted to finish their conquest. Both sides engaged in proxy wars, covert operations, and constant spy games while officially maintaining the treaty. During this time, Emperor Vitiate revealed his true plan, and it was worse than anyone imagined. He didn't just want to rule the galaxy. He wanted to perform a ritual that would consume all life in the universe, making himself a god in the process. Even his own Dark Council was horrified when they learned about this. The Cold War eventually erupted back into open conflict, the Galactic War. But this time, heroes from both the Republic and even some Sith worked together to stop Vitiate. A coalition including the hero of Tython and other champions fought to prevent the Emperor from consuming all life on planets like Ziost. Around 3626 BBY, Vitiate was finally defeated permanently. He'd tried to preserve himself by taking a new body as Valkorion, emperor of another empire called Zakul. But even that wasn't enough. The combined efforts of heroes from across the galaxy destroyed him completely, ending his 1,500 years of existence. Without Vitiate's iron rule, the true Sith Empire began to fracture. The Dark Council fought among themselves for control. Some Sith lords declared independence with their own territories. The Republic, sensing weakness, pushed back hard. Over the following centuries, the mighty empire that had taken 1,300 years to build slowly crumbled from within. By 3000 BBY, Vitiate's Sith Empire was no longer the galactic power it had been. Some Sith held on to various territories, but the unified empire was gone. The true Sith Empire, the last direct continuation of the old Sith Empire from Korriban's ancient days, had finally fallen. Think about what Vitiate accomplished, though. He took the survivors of a defeated empire and turned them into a power that challenged the entire galaxy. He preserved Sith culture, knowledge, and tradition for over a millennium. His empire came closer to total victory than any Sith faction before or since. The true Sith Empire was the old Sith Empire's last hurrah, its final attempt to reclaim the glory of the Golden Age under Marka Ragnos. It had the same structure with a Dark Council, the same Sith Academy on Korriban, the same dedication to the dark side and conquest. In many ways, it was like the old empire had never truly fallen, just gone into hiding and come back stronger. With Vishiit's defeat, the age of Sith empires was truly over. Future Sith would operate differently, in smaller numbers from the shadows. But for one last time, the galaxy had seen what the Sith Empire could be when united under a single powerful leader with the patience to wait for the perfect moment to strike. After the Sith Emperor's empire crumbled, the galaxy had about 1,000 years of peace before the Sith came roaring back. But this time, they weren't even trying to build an empire. They just wanted to burn everything down. Around 2000 BBY, a Jedi named Fannius decided the light side wasn't for him. He renamed himself Darth Ruin, gathered every dark sider he could find, and declared war on the Republic. This kicked off the new Sith Wars, and calling them chaotic would be the understatement of the millennium. For the next 1,000 years, the galaxy was in constant warfare. But here's the thing. These new Sith had no organization whatsoever. Every warlord called themselves Dark Lord. Every faction fought every other faction, and they spent as much time attacking each other as they did fighting the Republic. Darth Odeon, Darth Daemon, dozens of others, all claiming to be the true heir to the Sith legacy, while their infighting kept them from actually winning. The Republic nearly collapsed during this period. By 1100 BBY, they'd lost control of most of the Outer Rim. Technology actually went backward on some worlds because nobody had time for progress when they were constantly at war. This era got so bad, they called it the Republic Dark Age, and for good reason. Finally, around 1050 BBY, a Sith Lord named Khan got sick of all the infighting. He united most of the Sith warlords into something called the Brotherhood of Darkness. Khan had this idea that all Sith should be equals. No more Darth titles. No more power struggles. Of course, he was still clearly in charge, but at least they stopped fighting each other long enough to nearly destroy the Republic. The final showdown came at Ruusan, where Khan's Brotherhood fought the Jedi Army of Light through 7 devastating battles. By the last battle in 1000 BBY, both sides were exhausted. That's when Khan made a fatal mistake. He used something called a thought bomb, a weapon that would destroy every Force user in range, including himself. One Sith saw this coming and stayed far away. His name was Darth Bane. Bane had been part of the Brotherhood, but he realized something crucial. The Sith kept failing because they kept fighting each other. Every time they built up power, they tore themselves apart from within. The old empire fell to civil war after Marka Ragnos. The Brotherhood was destroying itself through incompetence. The pattern was clear. So Bane came up with a radical solution: the rule of 2. There would only ever be 2 Sith at a time, a master to embody power, and an apprentice to crave it. When the apprentice got strong enough, they'd overthrow the master and take their place, then find their own apprentice. No more armies, No more empires, just two Sith working in absolute secrecy. After the thought bomb wiped out the Brotherhood and most of the Jedi at Ruusan, Bane let everyone think the Sith were extinct. He took an apprentice named Darth Zana and disappeared into the shadows. For the next 1,000 years, the Sith followed Bane's rule of two, passing power from master to apprentice, growing stronger with each generation. The Republic reformed itself, disbanded its armies, and settled into peaceful democracy. The Jedi became peacekeepers instead of soldiers. Everyone believed the Sith were gone forever. Even the Jedi Council was convinced, as Master Ki-Adi-Mundi would later say, the Sith had been extinct for a millennium. They were wrong. The Sith were right there the whole time, hiding in plain sight. Each generation of rule of two Sith learned from the last. Darth Zana mastered Sith sorcery. Darth Cognos could see the future. Darth Plagueis learned to manipulate life itself. And finally, there was Darth Sidious, also known as Sheev Palpatine. Sidious was Bane's ultimate successor, the culmination of 1,000 years of planning. He didn't just want to rule from the shadows. He wanted to destroy the Jedi completely and rule the galaxy openly as a Sith Lord. And unlike every Sith before him, he actually pulled it off. Starting around 32 BBY, Sidious played both sides of a galactic civil war he created himself. As Palpatine, he was the kindly Supreme Chancellor of the Republic. As Darth Sidious, he controlled the Separatist rebellion fighting against it. The Clone Wars tore the galaxy apart, while Sidious gained more and more emergency powers to deal with the crisis he was secretly orchestrating. In 19 BY, Sidious executed Order 66. The clone army turned on the Jedi and wiped them out in a single day. The Republic became the Galactic Empire with Palpatine as Emperor. His apprentice, Darth Vader, hunted down the few Jedi survivors. For the first time ever, the Sith ruled the entire known galaxy. Think about what this meant. After 5,000 years of trying, the Sith had finally won. Not through massive armies or ancient superweapons, but through patience, planning, and two individuals working in perfect secrecy. The rule of two had succeeded where every Sith empire had failed. Palpatine's Galactic Empire was essentially the Sith Empire reborn for the modern age. It had the authoritarianism, the military might, the dark side philosophy, everything the old empires had dreamed of but could never achieve. The entire galaxy under Sith rule, the Jedi extinct, the dark side triumphant. It only lasted 23 years. In 4 ABY, Darth Vader turned on his master to save his son, Luke Skywalker, throwing Palpatine down a reactor shaft. Both Sith Lords perished that day, apparently ending the Sith forever. The Empire crumbled, the new Republic rose, and the Jedi slowly began to rebuild. But here's the thing about the Sith. They always come back. Always. The story that started on Korriban with King Adas, that survived through Naga Sadow and Freeden Nad and Exar Kun, that endured through Revan and Malik and the Triumvirate, that rebuilt under the Sith Emperor and reformed under Bane. That story finally reached its climax with Palpatine. 5,000 years of Sith history, all leading to that moment when a Sith Lord sat on a throne and ruled the entire galaxy. The old Sith Empire might be ancient history, but its legacy shaped everything that came after. Every Sith who ever lived was following the path first, walked by those red-skinned warriors on Korriban. Every dark side technique, every Sith teaching, every tradition traced back to that desert world where it all began.